to your ASMR bedtime stories. Tonight, we embark on a chilling journey into the ancient legends of Stingy Jack with our brand new series, 13 ASMR Jack-o'-lantern horror stories. These are scary bedtime tales designed to lull you into sleep with whispers of the condemned and the eerie glow of the trickster's lantern. We'll explore 13 different fates, each one a whisper of Jack's curse set in the haunted corners of the USA. So, dim the lights, put on your headphones, and let these scary ASMR stories guide you into the darkest corners of folklore. Without further ado, let's begin our journey into the world of the Jack-o'-lantern. The Rocky Mountains out in Montana have a strange way of holding on to the last bits of daylight around Halloween. That's why Ben and Sarah figured they were ready for the creeping darkness and the fog when they headed out on their road trip. The trouble started when the GPS, which had been their only reliable guide, told them to take a sharp turn onto a gravel road that their map swore didn't exist. Right there, at the intersection, the fog was thick as soup, killing all visibility. That's when the weird thing popped up. A pumpkin. Not a festive pumpkin, but a big, crude turnip, carved into a grotesque face. Its glow wasn't from a candle flame. It was a sickly, constant yellow light, powered by something charred right inside it. Jack's lantern. The lamp of the condemned man. The air stunk of sweet sulfur and stale beer. Sarah felt a deep chill. The light didn't brighten things. It just seemed to suck up every last bit of the world's light, forcing them to look only at the turnip. Ben, driven by a terrible curiosity, followed the direction the glow pointed, and reality just went soft. The car moved, but the distance never shrank. After what felt like hours of driving blind, the car ended up right back at the same intersection. The turnip was still there. Ben checked the dashboard clock, 2:47 a.m. He drove off again, and a minute later, he passed the turnip. The time was always 2:47 a.m. They finally got it. They weren't lost travelers. They were passengers in Jack's damnation. The lantern had trapped them in the endless loop of hopelessness that consumes its holder. Ben slammed the gas pedal, snapping the loop for just a second in blind terror. When they looked back, they just saw that yellow glow laughing in the dark. Folks say the back roads have a long memory. Ben and Sarah know that memory will always hold that crossroads and that light. They know Jack's still out there, and his lantern of doom is waiting to be followed again. Mr. Peterson, an Ohio farmer, was wrapping up the harvest late on October 30th. He was worn out, but he had to get the last of the gourds in before winter truly set in. Deep in the field, he found something off, a pumpkin with a face. It wasn't carved with a knife. The pattern showed no blade marks. It looked like the face had been pressed and pushed out from the inside of the fruit. When he picked it up, the face twisted, then settled into the image of Peterson's late father. It held an expression of icy agony and a greedy sneer. He dropped the pumpkin onto the barn floor. That's when the silence broke with a guttural whisper. "Help me." Just for a moment. His father's voice was clear, but the tone was desperate, like a dirty bargain. The hell purplish glow of the internal coal flared. The farmer, paralyzed with fear, understood. It wasn't his father. It was Jack, the miser, using the memory of family greed to broker an exchange of prisons. "I know what you want. Take it," the voice hissed. Peterson felt a sudden, sharp jolt of material desire, a need to hoard, hide, and own everything. Jack's miserable curse was trying to take hold of his soul. The farmer ran, covering the pumpkin with a tarp. The next morning the fruit had rotted, but the ground beneath it was burnt and dry. They say the barn floor still won't grow anything. Peterson knows Jack's tomb soul doesn't need a light. It just needs a willing host to corrupt, and as evil as waiting to be dug up again. Fear often starts with a game. Two sisters in a suburb of Illinois lit their festive pumpkins one normal night. They were looking for light, but what they got was something not of this world. The candle in one pumpkin went out, but the light stayed on, an unnatural orange glow. It didn't cast the shadow of the pumpkin, but the shadow of an extremely tall skeletal creature with long arms that moved slowly across the ceiling. The light wouldn't go out. It moved when the pumpkin moved. It wasn't a physical projection. It was a spiritual shadow that ignored gravity. When the pumpkin moved into the hallway, the shadow headed straight for the basement door. The sisters got the horror. Jack's fire, fueled by hell's coal, wasn't there to brighten their faces. It was there to expose the pathways of damnation. The creature's shadow stopped right at the basement door, marking the darkest and deepest spot in the whole house. The creature wasn't showing itself. It was just pointing to where its power was strongest. Jack's light had shown them that their house was already compromised. It wasn't a game. It was a map of where the lost souls hide. In a desperate panic, one sister threw the pumpkin into the outdoor bin and covered it with dirt, trying to smother the cursed light. The light finally went out, but the knowledge stayed. The sisters know that even now, when the lights are off, the basement is marked. And Jack's light isn't looking to scare. It's looking to signal the misery that's about to arrive. A janitor, working the late shift at an old Boston pub, thought he was alone after the last drunk left on Halloween. The cleaning routine was his only company. In the darkest corner, though, a man was still sitting on a stool. He hadn't ordered anything for hours, and a single pumpkin sat on his table. The man's skin looked stretched, and his eyes were too bright. The man slid an old silver coin across the bar, and, in a deep voice, asked the janitor to light the pumpkin. The coin was so old it looked like it would burn the wood. As he lit the coal inside, the janitor jumped. His own reflection in the beer he was wiping showed the face of a smiling horned goat. He had been talking to the devil. The devil made him an offer. He asked him to just hold the lantern for a second, and the silver coin would be his. It was the same coin Jack had tried to trick the devil with centuries ago. The janitor, though terrified, felt the pull of the coin money that would fix all his problems. But his survival instinct kicked in, and he ran. He bolted out of the pub and never looked back. The next morning, the coin and the man were gone. But the janitor knows if he ever sees a lit lantern again, the devil will be close by, looking for another fool to finish Jack's deal. The camper had picked a spot way too remote in the Appalachians. When it's that dark, the silence is so heavy, it becomes audible. He was woken up by a sound too dry to be an animal. He saw a turnip lantern on a tree stump glowing with a sick light. Then he heard the voice. A hollow, dry chuckle followed instantly by his mother's voice. "Help me. Please forgive me for all my mistakes." His mother's voice, begging. But the sound was coming from the ground, from the stump, and the emotion felt fake, too raw to be real. The camper realized the twisted nature of it. The creature wasn't mimicking his mother. It was mimicking the guilt Stingy Jack felt for his own failures, knowing that misery is the strongest hook. "Come to me. I'll give you everything," pleaded the voice, which now sounded like a mocking screech. The lantern tilted, as if inviting him into the shadows. Instead of moving closer, the camper flicked on his own flashlight. The turnip seemed to cringe away from the bright beam. When he turned it off, the turnip and the laughter were gone. The camper cleared out before dawn. He knows the thing roaming the woods doesn't want his flesh. It wants his agony and his guilt. And Jack never stops looking for someone to share his cursed misery. A woman in a Michigan city found a solitary pumpkin on her porch, carved with a sad, pleading face. She brought it inside, thinking it was a neighbor's gift, a simple act of kindness. Once lit, the pumpkin gave off an orange glow that felt cold, not warm. From that night on, the woman's life changed. Her compassion dried up, replaced by a cruel greed. She started lying about money, dodging her family, and hoarding useless stuff. The pumpkin's light glowed brighter every time she committed a selfish act. In one clear moment, she realized she wasn't the one doing this. Jack was injecting his own doom and miserly nature straight into her soul. She was becoming a modern version of the damned farmer. She tried to throw the pumpkin out, but a voice in her head, sounding just like her own, told her, "Don't you dare. It's yours. Keep it all." The woman could never get rid of the pumpkin. She keeps it locked in a safe where the cold glow still burns. She's lost everyone she loved, but she has the pumpkin. They say Jack is happy. He doesn't just look for souls to doom. He looks for company in his misery. And now, he has the woman, just as greedy and alone as he is, waiting for the day she takes his place. A park ranger was patrolling a remote area of the Pacific Northwest. Local folklore talks about things that walk at night, but what he found wasn't a monster. It was a victim. Or so it seemed. An old man was sitting, exhausted, on a stump. He had no survival gear, just a carved turnip lantern with the coal burning inside. The old man mumbled that he'd been walking since last night, though his clothes looked ancient. The ranger tried to lead him to safety. He put him in the truck and headed for the station. But 10 minutes later, he was right back at the spot where he'd found the old man. The old man and his lantern were a temporary anchor. Every time the ranger tried to take him home, Jack's fate, eternal wandering, took over, snapping them both back to the starting point. The old man smiled then. It was the first time he'd smiled. "No rush, boy. We'll get there eventually," he said dryly. The ranger saw a second, abandoned jack-o'-lantern in the field. Panicked, the ranger jumped jumped out of the car and ran in the opposite direction from the old man. He refused to be a partner in the punishment. They say the ranger quit his job. He's a man who never drives at night and refuses to carry a flashlight. He knows the woods have their own prisoners, and Jack, having been rejected, waits patiently on that same stump. On Halloween night, a bored teenager in a suburban Texas neighborhood carved a pumpkin into the most gruesome face he could imagine. He wanted to scare people, but he was the one who got the lesson. As he lit it, he saw his reflection in the dark window, laughing in a way that wasn't his own. It was a cruel laugh, full of malicious satisfaction. He blew out the candle. The laughter stopped, but the reflection stayed lit, glowing with a cold, unnatural light. The cursed light had gotten stuck in his image. The reflection only flickered at the exact moment the kid lied to his parents or did some petty, mean thing. The reflection was Jack, his personal demon, watching and cheering on his miserly nature. He tried to smash the window, but the reflection just sneered. Jack's glow was tough to beat. The young man now avoids mirrors and windows. He knows it's not his soul that's at risk, but his reputation and his image. Jack's trick is a public weapon designed to turn him into a selfish outcast. They say the pumpkin face is still laughing in that window, a reminder that darkness loves simple spite. A family on a Nebraska farm woke up the morning after Halloween and found a perfectly carved, lit pumpkin lantern on their kitchen table. No one in the house had carved it. No one had lit it. The light was cold, and the air around it had a persistent smell of sulfur, mold, and stale beer. The light wouldn't go out, even when they tried to smother it. In the following days, the family's life filled up with fighting and hard feelings. The father became obsessed with money. The mother grew quiet and resentful. The spirit of Jack was in the house. They figured out the horror. Jack didn't want to steal. He just wanted a place to rest his misery. A spot where the devil wouldn't chase him. And he had picked their house. They tried to throw the pumpkin out, but every time they left it on the porch, it reappeared on the kitchen table, lit and defiant. The family now lives by an unstated agreement. They ignore the lantern. Jack is their new tenant, the unwanted spirit who dooms them to a life of meanness and gloom. They say the house smells like stale beer all year round. Jack's coal keeps burning at the heart of their home, and there's no evicting a condemned soul. A man known for his cruelty and nasty words found a pumpkin lantern in the Nevada desert. The light inside was weak, and the coal was cold and completely black. The man, driven by curiosity, stuck his finger in to touch the coal. The instant he did, he lost the ability to speak. His vocal cords just went dead. It wasn't the fire Jack used here, but the absence of hell's spark. The man, condemned for his harsh words, was now condemned to silence. All he could make was a dry, rasping cry, a moan of pain and frustration, the same sound the legend attributes to Jack when he realized his fate. Jack's punishment was clear. He who uses cruel words must be stripped of his voice, doomed to wander without the ability to ask for forgiveness or beg for help. The man is still alive, but he's an outcast, a silent drifter trying desperately to communicate. The pumpkin disappeared. They say that at night, the wind carries a dry, rasping cry. It's not Jack's cry, it's the lament of the man who discovered that the punishment for greed isn't losing money, but losing human connection. A young man was visiting his grandmother in a small New England town. On the porch, he found an incredibly old turnip lantern, practically petrified. It had the faint glow of something that had been burning for centuries. As he tried to wipe the dirt off the lantern, he touched the coal. In that instant, he forgot his grandmother's name. He looked at her. He loved her. But the word was gone. Jack's light didn't attack the body. It went for memory. It slowly erased bonds and identity, leaving behind only a feeling of emptiness and self-pity. The young man knew that if the light stayed on, he would forget who he was. He would become a lone wanderer, without history, family, or anything but his own miserable existence. Jack's goal wasn't fire. It was absolute loneliness. He wanted a partner whose pain was as empty and deep as his own. The young man had to tie a knot on his wrist with a piece of string to remember basic things. His name, his town. He had to run from the house to save what was left of his past. They say the lantern is still on the porch, glowing faintly. The light is still waiting for someone to touch it and erase the line between memory and Jack's eternal doom. A woman was dumped in a North Carolina state park on Halloween Eve. Blinded by anger, she was drawn to the solitary light of a pumpkin in a forest clearing. Jack, through the light, promised to lead her to the person who betrayed her. The woman followed the cold glow, fueled by vengeance. Instead of leading her to her ex-partner's house, the light guided her to a puddle. There, she saw her own reflection staring back with an expression of greed, despair, and self-pity. Jack's light didn't reveal the betrayer. It revealed her own wounded heart. The glow showed that she was the one who had betrayed herself, the one who had let greed and resentment consume her. The lantern chuckled. Jack didn't need a weapon. He just needed a mirror. The woman understood that Jack feeds on selfishness and internal betrayal. The woman left, ditching the pumpkin. Now she lives in fear that if she's ever tempted by greed, Jack's cold light will reappear to remind her of her own misery. Jack's punishment is subtle. Sometimes hell isn't demons. It's the reflection of what we've let greed do to us. A historian was visiting an ancient Celtic art exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City around Halloween. Among artifacts of stone and bronze, a primitive turnip lantern was on display. She felt a compulsion, an order. She couldn't leave without putting a shiny silver coin next to the turnip. The urge was so strong she did it without thinking. As she walked away, she heard a short, choked laugh coming from the empty room. She realized the coin she left was the same one Jack had used to trick the devil centuries ago. The historian, without knowing it, had become part of the trick. She was now obligated to repeat Jack's action, binding her soul to the curse of greed and deceit. She tried to get the coin back, but the turnip flared brightly, and a voice in her mind told her, "You gave it. It's his. Go." Now, every year on Halloween Eve, the historian feels the need to get an another silver coin and find a crossroads. She knows the offering is eternal. They say Jack is laughing. He doesn't need hell to give him a break. He just needs the living to repeat his greed for him, keeping his lantern lit in the heart of humanity.
strings scrape like nails on glass. The single chord echoes low and hollow. Bassline pulses faintly. Like a warning. The chord lingers, stretching time. The cello grows uneasy and feral. Bassline swells, heart pounding harder.
Strings drag slower, each note a sigh.
The chord fades into a whisper, dwindles, heartbeat faltering. Silence swallows the last breath.
Resonating like a distant storm. Wind whistles right wanders across an empty plain. Descending tones stretch into infinity, fading into the void. A low pulse emerges, steady and vast, like a heartbeat lost in the wilderness. Wind whistles weave in and out, circling, searching. The descending tones grow darker, pulling the listener into endless horizons. A brief pause.
Silence settles like dust, then a faint flicker of light, a higher tone, shimmering like a mirage. It fades quickly, swallowed by the deep bass, returning to the eternal wonder.
The bass fades into nothingness. A whisper of wind remains. Descending tones slow, each note dissolving like footsteps in the sand. Silence, endless.
again.